So the first step here is I'm going to import pandas as PD and then use the pandas read underscore CSV command to read the data frame. Now I need to make sure that the data is actually ready to be learned. I'm going to check for missing values by chaining together isInA command with the sum command on the data frame. And in this case, there aren't a whole lot of missing values, so I'm just going to drop any observation that has any missing values at all. I want to use inPlace equals true so that my data frame is actually updated. Now I'm trying to get dummy columns for species and sex. When I call it, it doesn't work. It tells me the data frame object doesn't have a getDummies command. Turns out that getDummies belongs to the pandas library, not to an individual data frame. So I have to add the argument of which data frame I want to drop from. It's still telling me that it has a problem. So now I'm going to have to investigate further. Panda's default behavior is to try to get dummies for all of the columns that it sees as being categorical variables. I didn't realize that there are actually 3 categorical variables here. There's species, there's island, and there's sex. So I'm going to go back and add species, island, and sex as prefixes. And you see the change that is made in my data frame. For instance, instead of having an island column with the variables being Bisco, Dream, and Torgerson, I now have 3 columns: Island Bisco, Island Dream, and Island Torgerson. And I have 0s and 1s in each column depending on whether that variable took that value in the original column that I had. Okay, my goal here is to drop the chinstrap, species chinstrap, and species Adeli columns. So I tried doing the drop with inPlace equals true, and it tells me that they're not found in the axis. I'm not sure at first what this error is, and then I look back at the getDummies command, and I realize that when I called getDummies, I didn't actually save it anywhere. So I'm going to make sure that that's saved in the Penguins DF data frame. And now if I go to drop those columns, it should work because this gives me Penguins DF having those columns. Now I'm going to split out my target and my feature. Initially I thought about splitting out X, but I think it works better to fit out the target Y. So I have species Gen2 as the target. I'm going to make the big X of my features be a copy of Penguin DF, or actually I'm just assigning it to be Penguin DF. And then I'm dropping the column species Gen2 from this because that's what I'm trying to predict on. Remember, inPlace equals true will make it happen so that I don't have to do assignment. Now I'm going to import DecisionTreeClassifier from sklearn.tree. That allows me to create a classifier, which I'm going to call CLF. And I'm just going to pass this DecisionTreeClassifier in without any arguments. From sklearn model selection, I import the train test split command. So this allows me to take my X and Y data and split it into corresponding training and testing observations. I like to have a random state set for reproducibility, and you can tell that it takes me a minute to remember what the command for setting a random state is. Eventually I remember that it's random state equals 42. Now I can just call clf.fit on xtrain and ytrain, which makes the data decision tree be fit on the training data of X and Y. Finally, I call clf.score, which gives me an idea of the accuracy of how this classifier performs on the testing data. This is a pretty good model based on what we've seen so far. Now, this certainly isn't